Since the dawn of time, mankind has had a singular, shining goal: to put monsters in balls. And when Hephaestus descended from Mount Olympus to deliver mankind the gift of a Game Boy Advance SP with backlight, it took mere moments for that goal to be realized. However, God is dead and we have long since killed him, and Nintendo doesn't care about their money-printing IP anymore, simply churning out broken games and tacking $30 DLC on as an afterthought. You're welcome, kid. Now go shiny hunt on the interstate. I think I saw a Mareep over there. So it's up to others to fulfill that creature-catching dream we've always desired, and Monster Sanctuary is exactly that. You play as a Spectral Keeper, a person blessed with the power to control one of the 4 spectral familiars passed down for generations. These are your starters, and consist of a lion, a bird, my favorite Hearthstone card, and a toad. You can choose whoever you want, but if you choose the lion or bird, you should probably ask your parents if you were planned or not. The answer may shock you. And while the fox is pretty cool, it doesn't have good stats for the cost, which means it's time for frog gameplay. Now, to understand what this game is all about, you need to first understand the story. The lore is deep, complex, and beautiful, and someone probably threw it together in 20 minutes. A long time ago, the entire world was transformed into Britain by an unknown event, rendering it completely unlivable. Humanity banded together and formed the Sanctuary, a place where monsters and humans could live in harmony together. But a group of humans decided that monsters should be enslaved, not cooperated with. They formed the Order of Alchemists, and their leader was sealed away hundreds of years ago. This is all told to you through dialogue that I definitely paid attention to. When you start out on your adventure in the Sanctuary, you quickly discover that champion monsters are being spotted all over. These are more powerful and aggressive versions of regular monsters, and alchemists are being seen nearby each one. It's up to you and the other spectral keepers to unravel what's happening and put a stop to this new order of alchemists. But I don't care. I'm trying to catch this dinosaur. The first thing you'll notice if you go into this expecting Pokemon is that this is a platformer. This leads to some interesting gameplay ideas like platforming puzzles or mazes, and some less interesting gameplay ideas like missing a jump 84 fucking times. All things considered, it's a pretty damn good platformer. The controls are nice and snappy, but the jump is a little floaty in my opinion. It takes some getting used to, but the platforming and puzzles are expanded on a lot. When you're outside of battle, you can summon any of your monsters to follow beside you. While you have a monster out, you can use its field ability. Field abilities can be anything from knocking down walls to making your player hover, or even creating terrain and interacting with the environment. A lot of the areas are gated behind field abilities. For example, you're required to go to a beach area, but you can only get there once you have a monster that can swim, which you only get after clearing another area of the game. I quite like this because you frequently find areas you're not sure how to get to, so when you get a new ability, you instantly know where you need to go, all Metroidvania style. Luckily, if you're ever stuck or lost, there's a feature in the menu labeled Talk. Selecting this will make your spectral familiar remind you where you need to go or what you should try next, so you never come to a grinding halt. A lot of monsters have the same field ability, so it's imperative to always choose the coolest looking one. But let's go over how you actually catch monsters in this game. We don't have any Pokeballs in Monster Sanctuary. You kill monsters and steal their eggs. Wild encounters are found all over the Sanctuary, and there's a random chance you'll get one of the monster eggs after each battle. Hatching eggs will add that monster to your collection, and you can change your current party at any time to add or remove monsters. Similar to Pokemon, your monsters have levels, but when you hatch a new one, it doesn't always hatch at level 1. Depending on the level of your highest monster and the level cap of the hatched monster, it'll be a significantly higher level. And thank goodness, because later in the game, this will cut down the levels you need to grind by about 20. When it comes to actually leveling them up through battle, all the monsters in your party gain XP whether they were actually in the battle or not. As you probably noticed by now, battles consist of 3 monsters on each side. You can use your monster's abilities in any order, and it's really important to use damaging abilities last. As you can see, there's a little combo counter up here in the corner of the screen during battle. This goes up when your monsters apply buffs, shield allies, or deal damage. The more hits something does, the more the combo meter goes up, no matter how much damage those hits do. The higher the combo count is, the more damage the next attack will do, meaning the last monster to attack on your turn can do upwards of double or even triple damage. The combo resets every turn and is incredibly important if you want to actually win encounters. Champion monsters and other keepers serve as the boss battles of this game, and a few are rather challenging. For the most part, all the main story was well balanced, and I never felt the need to grind a bunch of levels, even if I lost an encounter or two. But speaking of levels, let's talk about the best part of the game, the level system. This isn't Pokémon, where you get specific moves at specific levels. In Monster Sanctuary, every single monster has its own unique skill tree. Every level, you get a single skill point, and each row of skills becomes available at certain levels. These skills can be anything from flat stat increases to new abilities to entirely unique passives not seen anywhere else in the game. Creating a team that synergizes with each ability you unlock and having specific roles for each of your monsters is incredibly important to actually win fights, meaning you should think long and hard before deciding to put more skill points into your tree. I really like this system, and finding new monsters with interesting abilities to work into your teams is super fun. Not only do you have the regular skill tree, each monster also has 3 unique ultimate moves that you can access only at level 40 or above. You can only select one of these at a time, and you can change it at any point outside of battle. You can only use one ultimate move a turn, and each one has a cooldown, but holy shit, some of them are absolutely insane, and once again opens up a lot of build options for each monster. Another way this game differs from Pokémon is the healing and move situation. Damage doesn't stick on your monsters outside of battle, meaning you're fully healed every time you walk into combat, which is good because it saves you a lot of time when you're not running back to heal after every fight. Also, if you lose a battle, you're simply kicked out and allowed to retry it immediately. While I somewhat dislike this, as it feels like there's no downside to losing, I have to appreciate how much time it saves. In battle, your monsters aren't limited on how many times they can use a move either. There's no power points like in Pokémon, instead each monster has a mana bar. As you level up abilities, they usually cost more mana to use, but you can always use them at a lower level, allowing a weaker version of the move to conserve mana instead. Mana regenerates a certain amount each turn, and managing it is important if you want to keep dealing damage throughout extended fights. There's also a variety of status effects that can be inflicted, from bleed to burn to shock to chill. They all have useful effects that you can build teams around, or just choose the coolest stuff and hope it works together. If you're having issues trying to build around a mechanic, there's probably an item for it. Each monster has slots for a few items. Usually 1 slot for an equipment and usually 3 slots for accessories. However, this can change depending on passives that your monsters have. Equipment and accessories grant an assortment of stats, and anything can be equipped by any monster. Except the Grey Pearl, we don't talk about that. Finding better equipment and upgrading it at the blacksmith will significantly improve the stats of your monsters, so it's really important to think about what you should give each of them. But we're not done yet. There's even more to think about when you're building your team. Every once in a while you'll find shifted monsters, or shift stones that can shift already caught monsters. There are 2 variations for every monster, dark or light. Depending on which one you shift to, your monster gains a variety of specialized stats and an entirely new passive. And this can be game-breakingly good if you do it right. All of this combines into a massive amount of customization that you have, allowing a ton of interesting builds, so no 2 Monster Sanctuary teams will be alike. Also, evolution is in this game. Unlike its AAA counterpart, it doesn't occur at specific levels. Instead, every monster that can evolve does so with a specific item. There's an area called the Tree of Evolution where you can use these items, but once you evolve a monster, it'll reset its skill tree. It'll stay the same level, so you can just dump the points back into it, but restarts because every evolution has an entirely new skill tree from the previous monster. Similar to some Pokémon, evolving doesn't just allow increased stats and moves, it can fundamentally change how a monster is meant to be built. For example, Mad-Eye is a monster primarily used for supporting. It inflicts a ton of debuffs, can cleanse your party, and generally only does damage once you've stacked a ton of its debuffs on an opponent. Once you evolve it into a Mad Lord, it becomes fully offensive. It can still apply a ton of debuffs, but drops all of its supporting skills to just deal damage instead. Again, a very cool idea that makes both forms of a monster useful. In fact, some are more useful before they evolve, so you should just keep them in their first form. Now, as I said before, you probably won't have many troubles with the main game. The fights aren't super hard, and while a roadblock may come up once in a while, you can basically use any monsters you want. That will end the moment you hit post-game. The post-game for Monster Sanctuary is pretty much just fights against new champions and keepers, and you're going to need to fucking focus up if you want to win. Drop the ego and look up some builds online. I don't care if you hate those monsters with your whole being. If the guide says to use them, you're using them. Post-game battles are composed of some of the most unfair dog shit I have ever seen in a game.
Oh my god, bro. Oh, hell no, man. What the fuck?
And while you might squeak by with your regular teams, you're absolutely not hitting that 5-star rating. Every battle awards you a rank depending on how well you did, and when you hit 5 stars, you're awarded that champion monster's egg as a guaranteed drop. So you better be min-maxing the fuck out of your team to get every monster in the game. And if you didn't choose the Toad as your starter, you're simply doomed. I didn't realize this when starting the game, but this Wednesday looking ass is the best starter, and it's not even close. It's one of the best supports in the entire game, and a lot of the post-game builds rely on it, only suggesting secondary options if you don't have it. And if you chose the Lion, God help you. The gameplay overall is really good, so let's talk about the graphics and music. The pixel art is really cute, and I like the designs for a lot of the areas and monsters. Some of the animations are a little weird, and attacks don't have very cool effects, but everything looks nice at the very least. It honestly reminds me of old Pokémon games, where you need to use your imagination for some of the attacks and sprites, which is a nice little bit of nostalgia. When it comes to music, it's okay. It's all got a really retro feel to it, fitting with that style of the lovely pixel art, but my main problem is how much of it is reused. Each area has its own theme, and while some are a bit lacking, like the ancient woods, there are also a lot of absolute bangers, like the mystical workshop. The issue that I have is that these areas don't have their own combat music, and there's only so many times I can listen to the same combat track, especially with how frequent it is. Certain keeper battles and champion fights have unique themes, but for the most part, it's the same old thing. And again, it's not a bad song, I'm just tired of hearing it. Overall, I'd say the soundtrack is good, but only a few of the songs are gonna make it onto my playlist. Overall, Monster Sanctuary is a fantastic creature catcher, with a ton of love put into it, scratching that itch that I have to return to the old days of Pokémon. It's unique and interesting, allowing for a ton of viable builds while still being incredibly challenging in the post-game. If you want to pick it up, it's on Steam and Nintendo Switch for about $20, but it goes on sale a lot, so you might want to wait for a holiday to grab it. I highly recommend it, and if you can rope your friends into picking it up as well, you can even battle them online and trash them by choosing the Spectral Toad. It was a wonderful time, and I hope that we can see even more DLC in the future. Thank you everyone so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you soon.